Hello, folks of the internet. Welcome to a very, very special live stream indeed. We are here celebrating the launch of Star Renegades. And with me today, Mr. Blue Liam, is 3 of the 6 developers who will be joining us today. There are more, but we'll only have 6. Right now we have 3. It's very complicated. But here they are. First of all, I'm Liam, producer, protector of the realm here at Raw Fury. And joining us right now, live up above, is in no particular order. Guys, why don't you introduce yourselves? Who's going to go first?
Yeah,
Ken's going first.
Yeah, Ken, you go first.
I'm Ken Cito, the CEO and co-founder of Massive Damage. We're a small indie team of about 10 people. We've been working on this game for almost 3 years now. So we're super thrilled that it's finally out and our fans can start playing it today.
I'm Gary Cito, also co-founder of Massive Damage and lead producer of Star Renegades. Something we're very proud of and really being excited to launch this game, and hope you guys like it. Thanks.
I'm Peter Mclaren. I guess the creative director is the title, but also sort of, I don't know, we all do sorts of different things, but not the co-founder. So I'm the one person who's not the co-founder here. And yeah, so game design, sort of like creative design, and working with everyone to get the game working, that kind of thing.
Fantastic. So thank you so much, guys, for joining the stream and for making the game, which just launched. Pretty exciting. How are you feeling about launch? You feeling good?
Pretty good.
Pretty good?
What do you think, Gary?
Yeah, so far so good. And I'm really excited. There's been a lot of chatter on our Discord channel, so it's really nice to see. And so far the reviews have been pretty good, so we're really happy about that.
Awesome. Well, guys, we're going to do a couple of things today on stream. First of all, we have the 3 of you, so we're going to talk a little bit about the story of Star Renegades and how the inception of the idea was, how the development went, especially during a time like this. Obviously, 2020 has been a strange year for a lot of reasons, but we don't have to go into too much of that. I think everybody knows. We are streaming on Twitch and Steam, and we are checking the chats for any questions people may have at home or wherever you're watching this. So if you have questions for the guys, drop them in the chat. We're going to stream for about 90 minutes today, and we'll do 2 segments. So we're going to have these 3 gentlemen right now, and then we have 3 other members of the team come in. And we'll try to theme some questions around their roles. What we're also going to be doing while we talk is I'll be attempting, keyword, okay? I'll be attempting to beat the hardest difficulty in the game. And the 3 chaps above will get to choose the squad that we'll be going with. So we're just going to kick off some gameplay straight away. And as we do that, you guys have turned pink again, but I think we'll go with that. It's very on brand. As we hop into this, the first question I have for you all is, when did you come up with the idea for Star Renegades, and what was the earliest version of it? Because, things change a lot over the course of development.
Who was it?
Do you want to answer that, Gary? Should I answer it?
If there are 3 versions to this, I want to hear them all.
I'll answer the first half.
Yeah, you answer the first half.
Star Renegades was originally a different kind of game. We won't get into that, but it was a different kind of game. And it didn't quite work. So we thought, okay, what kind of game can we make in a fairly short amount of time? So we went back to our roots. We went back to our Halcyon 6 kind of turn-based Jrpg combat, and wanted to expand on that idea into making it a more complex, more strategic kind of game, and a roguelike, more roguelike than Halcyon 6 was. And at the time, I think we were really inspired by some other really great roguelikes that we were big fans of, like Slay the Spire, Into the Breach. We wanted to combine that those roguelike mechanics from those games with the kind of background of JRPG combat that we had. And that's was the birth of this kind of idea.
Yeah. And then in January 2018, right? We just kind of started experimenting with a bunch of different ideas. After Halcyon 6, we had a bunch of stuff that was not really like on the cutting room floor or anything, but something that we were like, oh, if we had had more time, maybe we would have tried these ideas out, and we didn't get to them. So we had a bunch of ideas that we knew we wanted to play with, the use of time, and also shields and armor and stuff, and not having not giving the player reasons to extend combat for the purpose of like regeneration and stuff. So we had a bunch of ideas already thought out. So in January of 2018, we just started prototyping a bunch of different stuff for combat, and Brian was working on the art at the same time, and then it all just sort of like came together really quickly. It was like we maybe iterated on the combat system a couple times, and then Brian, it was like over the course of a week, started with like absolutely nothing, and then was just able to make this one image, which is still almost entirely in the game, which is the waterfall background on Menku with like a big robot and like a bunch of heroes. And if you go look at the teaser trailer from around then, like we basically built a teaser trailer around that. And that was just where the art style, where that sort of initial 2D art style came from, which was just like, he just knocked it out of the park really quickly. And then from then on, we just started showing it and adding stuff to it. And just sort of going where it took us.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and just to add to that, like it was around the time when we just basically got into partnership with our wonderful publishers, Raw Fury, that we decided to take the extra time to really amp up the graphics, and that's where we ended up with that 2DX presentation that you see today. Took about, was it 6 months, guys, for us to make that shift?
Probably a bit shorter. It was there's different segments that it had to be applied to.
Yeah.
Well, the initial like battle view was much less than that, I think. But it obviously added a lot of production time to the individual art assets.
You know, I remember Ken and Gary, you two came to Stockholm, which is where a lot of us at Raw Fury are based, and you showed us this full presentation of the game. You talked us through everything. We're kind of falling in love, and then you said, but if we had 6 more months, and then you just showed us a GIF of the new art style. And I mean, we just said yes right away, I think. I think we even had to like, can we just say yes now? Because it looked so cool. And we all agreed like that was the perfect direction for this game, is the style, the kind of 2.5D, because it was a bit more pure 2D back then. Really, really cool. But I'm going to hop into a run now.
That was my Steve Jobs and one more thing moment. So that was
yeah, that was the only time it happened. Yeah,
love it.
Nice to walk into a pitch meeting and just pull something magical out of a hat. Yeah.
Fantastic. So we are going to do 2 things now. First of all, I'm going to ask each of you to pick one renegade for me to bring with me. And Nodo is locked, by the way. Can't pick Nodo.
Okay.
And while we're doing that, if anyone in chat would like to have one of the renegades named after themselves while we do this run, just let me know in chat, and we'll get to you. So, Gary, who's your pick?
Oh, my favorite's a Spectre.
Spectre? Any particular
Spectre's
progeny?
great.
Sorry?
Any particular progeny? Or should we just go default?
Go default.
Okay.
That's fine. Pure, yeah. Yeah. The original Spectre.
Mm-hmm. And who's going to be the second choice, Peter?
Oh, to pair with the Spectre, I mean, I'll go easy on you and give you the Aegis.
Aegis.
Just the main.
My pick.
I pick. Okay. Do you want to take her? I can give a different one then.
No, whoever you want.
Okay, Ken's picking the Aegis.
She's my favorite.
Yeah, she's great.
Aegis it is. Any particular progeny or just default?
Ken?
Sorry?
Any particular progeny? Because
I like the default.
The default one? Because the interesting thing for anyone watching at home, there are like different progenies for each of the characters. So as you unlock romance, essentially, between the characters, they can have progenies. We're not going to go into the details of exactly how that happens, but you can let your imagination fill in the blanks. You can get these different versions of the same character, basically, and they have different starting powers, different powers they can unlock. Some of them are pretty damn nice.
Yeah, one of them is, I think, probably the super tank. It's probably the progeny of her, and I'm not going to say who else, but could be,
spoilers.
It could be Terrace Penrave. I'm not sure.
All right.
Should we pick that one just to change it up?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're gonna
And then I'll give you my favorite character, who's the Enforcer.
the Enforcer.
Just the main. Yeah, main
Oh.
Enforcer.
Main Enforcer,
Oh.
default. Okay, we've named one after GD Insomniac 23. We've named one after Violator. I need one more person to name our final character.
And we put up Perfidious. I just saw it on chat.
Oh, Perfidious. You got it.
Yeah.
Oh, I accidentally selected the wrong character. Here we go. Perfidious. That's a good one. Okay. We've unlocked a couple hero perks. I'll just make some choices here. But guys, why did you decide to make such a difficult game?
Is it difficult?
You tell me.
I don't know. I mean, obviously, like, we're biased, just from having designed it and stuff. But I find it like weirdly forgiving. I don't know. I find it, especially in the main easy setting, like you can kind of just breeze through it. But maybe it's really just like, it's really just test your understanding, test your idea of, step by step what you expect to happen, yeah, I mean, you can string together these like crazy like synergies. You've got some pretty good ones off the bat with this 3-person crew.
I would say
yeah.
to any new player is do not skip the tutorial. Don't blow past all the tutorial hints, because this game does not play like a typical JRPG combat. So you can't just default attack your way and heal up with potions kind of gameplay.
But if you do skip past them all, you can still read them later. So if you forget some of the basics, we got the tutorials in the menu. We got you covered.
But if you never played before, it's worth a read and take the extra time to kind of get all the little systems, because
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes the best, this is one of the big design pillars, is that we wanted to make defending be actually really important, and the way that you time your defense being really important, and also just like the main straight up attack of characters is oftentimes very useful, but it's by no means what you should default to. Like you should really be looking at trying to create as much advantage as possible to minimize the amount of health damage that your guys are going to get. And also, as round by round, certain things are going to happen that actually make it much like if you just think through the powers that you have, they give you openings. The enemies give you openings.
So for anyone watching at home that hasn't seen Star Renegades before, first time looking, would you like to just explain the basics of what we're looking at here, the combat, the timeline? And I'll quickly just say, Infested Cats is commenting that I said, why so difficult? And then I clicked the extreme difficulty. Yes, that's on me. I wanted to showcase it. I just want to show people how tough it can get. We'll see how far we get. Probably not very far. But for anyone watching, what is this game? Like, how does it work? What are we looking at right now?
Do you want to do that, Gary?
Sure, like the combat, I guess?
Yep.
I guess, well, what we wanted to do is, like Peter was saying, we wanted to make sure we didn't have a very traditional JRPG combat where you just kind of spam an attack and then take a potion to kind of heal up yourself afterwards. And we wanted to make it very strategic and different. One of the things we made sure is that every round felt different, and you weren't just choosing the same moves against the same enemies. And that's where the timeline came in, and the whole critting and staggering and breaking, and that the layout of the attacks from the enemies would change from round to round based on what you did in the previous rounds. It was a bit of a challenge because we wanted to make sure, like, one of the cornerstones of our combat is that it's deterministic. You see everything the enemy does. You see when it's going to happen, who's it going to happen against, and what damage it's going to do. So there's no RNG in that respect, in terms of like, oh, you missed, or you got a critical hit here because you got a good roll. And having that and having it, vary from round to round was a bit of a challenge. We had to really kind of iterate a lot in terms of our design to figure out, okay, how do we keep this kind of deterministic combat without making it samey every single round?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, like kind of like what Gary's saying, like from round to round, it's a constant shift. Like enemies will lay down the attacks that they're going to do, and then you push them back, and then depending on how much you push them back, which powers that you use, it'll be in a different spot in the next round. And so you kind of like it's what I think we did a really good job of is making it so that, you know, when a round starts, you always have to take a second and just look like, okay, what's going to happen? What's the thing that makes the most sense? And it, you know, while as we were playing it, we were like playing this idea, we were surprised to the extent that like we were choosing different powers, different targets, different like just different configurations of powers. And then on top of that, then later once we started really creating lots and lots of heroes, we found that the different hero combinations and different squads were yielding different interesting options, different synergies. So yeah, it's like a very flexible system in that way.
Cool. What do you think was the biggest challenge when designing the combat for the game?
Oh, that took many iterations. So it wasn't from a unified Bible design that we had.
No. I would say probably the UI was the biggest challenge. I mean, we knew we for the longest time we had like this like very basic UI that just like told us what we needed to know, and like just getting that translated into a way that people could pick it up, even for those early shows, was something that took a lot of thinking, a lot of iteration, and yeah, just because the sheer amount of information had to be sort of segmented into a digestible way.
Okay. So we're in a situation.
And then we had equipment and all sorts of stuff.
There's a lot of layers to it. So we're in a situation now that I just want to highlight to players as well. Swapping to the cursor here, you can see this little 0 next to the enemy's portrait on the timeline. What does that mean? What does that 0 mean? Because there's always a number here, and I know it's pretty important.
Yeah, that's the stagger limit. So basically, a very critical part of our game is to be able to push enemies back on a timeline. And every unit or every attack, I guess, every unit has a stagger limit that refreshes when they attack. So you can push them back on a timeline based on your character's powers, how much stagger they can do with an attack. But eventually it'll end. You can't just stagger them forever. So when it gets to 0, they're immovable. That attack will happen at that point unless you, like, say, stun them. And this is an interesting mechanic that we like to play with, because some characters, like the stagger limits will increase if you just don't even touch them. So they typically start at 2 for a lot of attacks, but then if you just kind of leave that unit alone and they attack again, it'll increase to 4, allowing you to kind of stack the staggers and prolong them and consecutively break them into further rounds the next time around.
So there might be a point in not attacking too much initially and just kind of defending for a bit, because then you can stagger them more. Just to give an example to anyone watching as well, like right now we got the blade shot is highlighted here, and you can see when we select that ability we're going to get the crit bonus, and that's because if you look at the timeline up top, we're attacking before the enemy. That gives us the crit bonus. But with the backstab ability, it's actually going to be after the enemy, so we don't get the crit bonus, and that's core when you're playing this. That's a pro tip from me, who's only beat the easiest difficulty of the game so far.
Oh, we can show them what it means by the break that you were seeing when you're aiming.
Yeah, so you can notice here that the enemy is still on the timeline before we do the ability, but if we do the blade shot, it's going to do 35-second delay, and on this 60-second timeline, that's a long delay. So when we use that, misclicked. When we use that, it's going to get break, and that means the enemy gets pushed into the next round. So they're not going to do an attack this round, which is pretty damn useful. I keep deselecting my character. There we go.
Yeah.
That's better. I'm playing with gamepad and mouse at the same time. Not
Nice.
recommended. Don't do this at home, people.
That's pro level.
Yeah.
So there's it's not a question, it's a statement from Blah C saying, we need merch. We do actually have merch available. If you check out rawfury.com, hit the little merch button. There is a link. It provides some merch. We may be building that out in the future as well. I know we've had talks about a Justin plushie, but Cannot confirm anything at this time. Domino just dropped a link in the Twitch chat there. Thank you, Domino. For anyone watching on Steam, you just check out the following link, which I am dropping in real time. That's real time, Gary. No, I'm not logged in. Hang on. Could someone drop that in the Steam chat, the merch link?
Let me see here.
Much appreciated. So how long have you been working on Star Renegades now? Because we signed a good like 2.5 years ago, I want to say.
No, that's 2020. It's putting you in a time warp.
Maybe it is. when did we start working together?
2019.
It was 2019,
wasn't it? Yeah,
last winter.
Really? Oh, there's a link. Yeah.
No, it must have been
Q1 2019, wasn't it?
Nobody knows how long we've been working on this game. It's
it's
been a while.
We started. I think the very first days that we were really talking about this version of the game was probably January 2018, right, Gary? Like early January, like right back from winter break kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah.
2018.
Yeah.
I generally feel it's like just over 2.5 years, almost, kind of bordering on 3 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks for dropping the link there in the chat, Ari and Mathon. Appreciate it. Question from Cheese Grater. Love the name, by the way. Game looks awesome. Is it DRM free? I can answer that one. Yes, it is. It's DRM free. You can obviously you buy it on Steam. It's going to have the built-in Steam thing. We also have a version on GOG if you want to go pick that up. It's completely DRM free as far as that goes. No kind of installation limit or anything like that. So how long is Massive Damage, which is the studio that the three of you, two of you co-founded, one of you didn't, putting Peter on the spot there.
One of you definitely didn't.
when did Massive Damage come to be?
We started it, me and Gary, we started it in the fall of, this was 10 years ago.
2010, that's our 10-year anniversary soon.
Awesome.
Yeah. Good timing. 2010, and there was we picked a very strange time to sign on with a startup incubator in Montreal just before the Montreal winter started. So we left the warmer climates of Toronto to go stay in Montreal, where temperatures would go from like minus 25 Celsius. Which is probably, I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, maybe minus 1,000 Fahrenheit. Like that.
Minus 1,000.
So all I remember is me and my brother we rented a little place next to nearby the incubator office. And every day we would put on our, the same winter hazmat suits that you see in the movie The Thing to go outside our house that we rented to we walked too. We rented a place that wasn't far enough to justify taking any other transportation. Walking through nuclear winter to get to the incubator, and we did that for 6 months, and then vowed never to go back to Montreal in the winter ever again. But the food was very good.
And this experience actually inspired the camping scene, and you see this campfire in the middle there. It's inspired by this, right?
Yes.
Do you want to talk about the camping mechanic real quick as well while we're here?
Sure. You want to take it away, Gary? Peter?
Yeah, you take it, Gary.
The camping mechanic was kind of something we wanted to put in to kind of allow the characters to kind of grow. Do you know in roguelikes, one of the big things with roguelikes is that it's hard to get attached to characters because you start over again and you just kind of start from scratch and there's no persistence in terms of the characters themselves. So we wanted to add some sort of personality to the characters and backstory, and how do you actually kind of grow attached to these characters even though they're quote unquote throwaway and they'll die and you'll restart. So we thought that a camping scene where they can kind of bond and develop relationships would give us the opportunity to show some of their backstory, some funny dialogue, and allow their relationships to kind of grow, I guess, and allow you to control who's going to be pairing up with who. And that also led into allowing us to, have character variant progeny unlocked. So having you to kind of bond characters so that you can have alternate versions of them, quote unquote progeny, for more runs, and allow us to have a lot more characters for you to play with and a lot more variety for your runs, because you'd be playing this over and over again, right? So that was kind of the impetus behind the camping scene.
And there's some strategy.
Plus, Brian really liked his JRPGs and really wanted a camping scene, so we put that in there for him.
Brian also insisted on combos. He did this whole thing of like, we have to have combos.
Right on.
And, you know, which is a great move, because I mean they're like one of the more fun things. And like, you know, as you play the game again and again, you sort of get an understanding of which heroes combo well with other heroes, and you know, strategically pair those heroes together, kind of thing.
Awesome.
Oh, so there's a question from the Almighty Q that said inspiration from any other JRPGs when designing a combat system. Definitely a lot of inspiration from the Grandia series. And there's a bunch of kind of classic older JRPGs that we were looking at for studying some of the mechanics, just understanding why was this so much fun to play? Why, you know, what part of this was the real meat of their, you know, systems? Because I find a lot of the older classic JRPGs have a lot of really interesting systems that kind of maybe got a little muddied as they started creating more new ones, or streamlined a lot more. So there's some gems to be found in some of these older games. Chrono Trigger, obviously, Grandia, Octopath Traveler. We definitely looked at for kind of how they're doing some of their presentation, but also how they're trying to make their combat a little snappier. And it was a hodgepodge of a lot of inspirations, to be honest.
Yeah,
the timeline system was definitely inspired by Grandia. The kind of deterministic nature, where you can see every enemy's move and when it's going to go and who's going to get against. We were inspired by Slay the Spire and Into the Breach. It was something like we just kind of thought one day. I think Peter and I were just talking. It was like, hey, what would it be like if you could actually just see everything the enemy's doing? Like, let's just try it out. Like, we didn't actually plan that from the beginning. It just kind of happened midway through our iterations. Like, how would this feel, and how would that change our design? And once we put it in and remove the RNG, there's actually RNG built into the game. There's like stats for minimum damage and maximum damage, but we just make them all the same. So the engine is actually capable of RNG. We just not did it. We clamped it down. Let's try not doing RNG. Let's try not having any misses. No misses, no damage variant. You see everything, and then see how that feels. And,
our game engine is like an iceberg. You have all this stuff underneath that you can't see that it has capabilities for.
Yeah, actually, there's actually a mana system in it.
Yeah.
There's a full-blown like mana system for every character if you want it. Actually, it's a variable mana system too. So some people could have anger, some people could have mana, some people have energy, but nobody has it right now because we just kind of like, you know what? It doesn't work in the game. Let's just not use it.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Some other games, maybe not so much on the combat side, that were big inspirations were. I think the biggest one for me was Endless. Why am I blanking on it? Dungeon of the Endless, which I played so much before starting on this game. The sort of like self-determining who levels up when. With a resource system was very much inspired by that. Some of the art also, I guess, style would be sort of loosely, sort of like a loosely related. And then also the equipment system, unlocking different equipment rewards, and then putting them into specific hero slots that are determined by their classes, that sort of thing, was like a big inspiration as well.
Right on. I didn't know there was a mana system. That's really
you might remember the earlier builds. Some of the characters had ammo and had to reload.
Yeah, that's right. And you had to reload.
Yeah.
That's the mana system. But some people had energy. Some people had like kind of like a rage system. So the more you attack, it went up, and then you would use one super attack, and it would wipe out again.
Right.
But
lots of capability.
Yeah, it was just complicated for the UI, and it was just it muddied up the whole experience. It was like, oh, who's this guy again? He does what? And then it's just got really complicated.
Right. Yeah, Violator on the Steam chat. Violator with the clutch. You are right. You are absolutely right. That was the clutch play. There's a mechanic I really want to dive into as well after this combat, which is the adversary system. But before we do that, I'm going to kill these guys. And a cuddly kitten asks, oh, by the way, shout out to Mia Sunshine. A cuddly kitten, what types of processes did you go through to perfect the sprite design of characters? By the way, the game looks great. Getting it on the next paycheck for sure. You're awesome.
That's definitely a question for Brian.
Okay, so Brian's going to be here in like 20 minutes. Yeah. We'll save it for Brian, okay?
As far as we know, it was like, hey, Brian, we need this. And then Brian was like, this? And we're like, no, not that. This? No, definitely not that. This? Yeah, pretty much. That's exactly what we needed it to be. Okay. And that was the process as far as we know.
That's how you make art, people.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll get Brian's version after the break.
Brian's the one that insisted on drawing, hundreds of frames, like up to 500 frames of animation for each hero and enemy sprite. And
I mean, we
were a little scared of how that actually would turn out because of resources and also how long it would take to do that. But it turns out that Brian's half cyborg and he was able to smash out these characters in record time.
Are we sure he's just half cyborg?
I mean, at the start of the process, we kind of went for it by a frames per second methodology, where Brian had drawn some sprites, some characters at 10 frames per second, and we're like, no, we need more. and because he's like, no, but 10 seconds is standard for pixel art. I was like, yeah, but I think we can do more. So we went up to 12, and then we went up to 16, and then we went up to 20, and like, okay, yeah, 20 is good. 20 is Disney level almost. So let's do that.
Also, Brian has a time void that he can go into. So he'll go in and then time travels, goes forward for him, but no one else. So he just goes in and comes out. It's you'd think that's what we'd be selling, but he won't give us the patent.
Yeah, Brian is not able to somehow, completely overwork himself working on this game, even though we tell him to go to sleep. And then he'll go do his time travel thing, and then the next week he'll be like, well, I finished all of this stuff for work, and I somehow managed to finish 3 Jrpgs.
It's nuts.
None of that makes any sense to us.
And then he's like, oh, and I have a new baby now.
Yeah, and he has 2 kids too.
Yeah.
Hey folks, welcome to the Brian Appreciation Stream. He'll be with us in 20 minutes. So meanwhile...
Yeah, I don't understand.
So while we wait for our Lord and Savior Pixel awesomeness, let's take a quick look at the adversary system. So there's this special screen in the game where you get to see the Imperium. Now the Imperium is correct me if I'm wrong, bear with me, the Imperium is a multi-dimensional threat that is going through dimension by dimension, destroying everything, okay? They're definitely not the good guys, okay? I want to make sure not the good guys in any way, unless you ask Peter. But
well, no. Well, if you think about it,
we'll do another stream about that.
Right? No, they're definitely the bad guys.
Definitely the bad guys. But in this screen here,
because they have a lot of tentacle stuff going on.
A lot of tentacles.
Banners, they're evil looking. They're robots.
They look pretty evil.
They're evil robots, not good robots. You can tell. Let's see. That's pretty much it. They have a AI that controls them called Mother, who's very mean. Yeah, they're evil, definitely.
And the screen we're looking at now is what we call the adversary screen. And this is where you can basically see the Imperium starship, this multi-dimensional crazy thing. The goal is for you to essentially wipe this out, and you have all these crazy, really, really mean people who who inhabit this screen.
Bad guys.
Bad guys. That's a good phrase for that. I like that. We'll keep using that. But as you go through the game, you'll be fighting against these adversaries, these bosses, essentially. And if you're lucky, you take them out. They die. You don't have to think about them anymore. But what happens if you lose a fight against one of these guys?
Gary.
They'll get promoted. They'll get buffed. They'll move on probably to the next planet, waiting to kill you again.
So this is between runs. If you start again, you'll meet
Yeah.
the same crazy mech guy like I'm fighting right now, the dude with the flamethrower.
Yep.
Can
He'll
be
come back.
promoted.
He'll come back. He'll be stronger. Yeah, he'll be ready. I mean, obviously, there's the elephant in the room. There's no getting around it. This is the Nemesis. Our take on the Nemesis system.
Yeah.
It's something.
Whoa! There.
Hold up, we stole this idea?
Whoa!
It was something I loved from Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor, and I thought it fits perfectly into a roguelike in that, like the Nemesis, the adversary system, that's what we call it. The adversaries, they get stronger when you die, and what happens most in a roguelike? You die. So it just made sense to have these enemies persist and harass you and taunt you across runs, so that it just seemed to make sense and allow you to have some variety in terms of the enemies that you face, and hopefully make them memorable and something you come back and that purple firewolf, goddamn him, I'm gonna get him next time. Kind of feeling.
I've definitely lost multiple times to the same adversary and come back on repeat runs. And you think they were already difficult the first time we fought, and now they got a promotion, they got a pay rise, they're really happy, they're eating out a lot of times in the week, and here they are, ready to kill me again, even stronger. But it's so satisfying when you finally get to kill one of them. So that's part of the fun. Question from Anotherton. Hey Anton, how's it going, man? Good to see you. How linear is the game?
Linear. And I mean, not very. I mean, it one of the things we wanted to avoid was like the sort of, being sort of drawn on led by a string kind of thing from a lot of Jrpg stories where, it's like, there's like this very heavy duty story sending you from one place to another place in, a very, very specific order. We wanted to make sure that there was enough that sort of roguelike, branching decision making, meaningful decisions, being able to survey a situation like a map and saying, I'm going to take this route to the objective point because I want to hit these things and I want to kill these two guys. And I know that if I do that, then like a dungeon's going to open up over here. And then you go through the dungeon. It's like a totally new area kind of thing. So there's like lots of, we made sure that there's just interesting decision points throughout the game rather than like really sending the player along on a straight line.
Right on. So there's a fair bit of surprises in there and multiple runs and all that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still...
Yeah, and we have some new ideas that we've been thinking up for post-launch stuff as well. So definitely keep a close eye on our Steam page and announcements.
That was one of the beauties about roguelikes. It's just like people being able to just pick up the game and play it again and again. Is that especially with our sort of like interdimensional theme, it's really easy to just like splice in new stuff getting generated, and new bits of content, new enemies and equipment, and well, I guess I can't say anything more than that. But yeah, just
going to commercials,
splice
people.
in new stuff.
No, we're definitely just getting started, and there's a lot of plans for more stuff. Speaking of which, there's a question here about the Switch version. So yeah, the game is coming to consoles. We're planning on releasing it for Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and Nintendo Switch. It's probably going to run on the next-gen consoles as well, just because we have backwards compatibility, so that's something we're testing out. But there's a question about when is the Switch version coming, and we're not really talking about specific dates yet. We are definitely in the place where we want to make sure that whatever we launch is in a really good place, and it should feel nice on all the consoles. And to be transparent, we have been slowed down a little bit by, I don't know if you've heard about this thing called 2020. Things are going a little slower than we were hoping on the porting side, but hopefully that's not going to impact our schedule too much, and we'll still be able to get it out very soon. But no dates that I can mention right now. Going to a completely different question. Guys, we're going to wrap up with the three of you in just a few minutes, and we're going to invite three other members of Massive Damage onto the channel, including Brian, and also two other fantastic human beings. I guess Brian was part cyborg, so I don't know if we can say other. Anyway, I digress. I've got a question for the three of you, and this is really for everyone to answer individually. If you had any piece of advice for people who might want to get into the games industry for whatever reason, what would you say?
Ooh.
I'm gonna be super glib and just say you should meet Gary and Ken in Montreal that one time they were living there and somehow get hired by them, and then just stick with them for like a decade, and you'll be fine. That's all I've got. I've like the most improbable like backstory of getting into the industry, and it's mostly because of these two guys. So I don't really have a ton to add to the conversation, unfortunately.
Ken, go ahead.
Gary, you want to start and I'll add to it?
Sure. I would just say start making games now. There's so many tools out there that allow you, whether you're an artist or a designer or a developer, there's so many tools out there that allow you to kind of just start making games and start playing with them, and just go out and learn and do it, and like just develop stuff and put it out there and play, and yeah, just play around with these tools, because the more games you make, the better they will be in the end. Like for us, it took us a long time to get to start Renegades that we have now, and we've learned a lot along the way, and we've had a lot of failures along the way too. So the more you just do and get it out of your system, the better you'll get.
Yeah, I would say to add to that, that you should definitely talk about the game that you're making early to your friends, to other people who enjoy video games. Don't fall in love with your idea too much that you are resistant to critique. Definitely want to understand, basically, even if the feedback you're getting may not be what you want to hear, understand that you may want to take a few bits and pieces from there, or try to understand the root causes of what made them give you that kind of feedback in the first place. And I think the other thing would be to, if you want to make games as a business, as something that you see yourself doing as a career going forward, making multiple games or starting a studio that can survive making multiple games, you really have to understand the marketplace. So you can't look at a game that, say, came out 5 years ago that succeeded and say, well, I'm going to make something just like that, or something similar but a little bit better. You have to understand where the market is in the time frame that you are trying to make your game. So yeah, maybe, I don't know if I'm being super clear about that, but a lot of what we work on, it's a combination of what we want to build, as well as an analysis of what people want to play these days, and whether we have the audience for what we want to build out there. So that's the business side of things.
Right on. Well, guys, thank you so much. Any final words, any pro tips for the players at home? We're going to be checking out Star Renegades tonight.
Don't be afraid to defend.
Don't be afraid to
defend.
Right, that's a good one.
When you get an equipment reward, really think through which one makes the most sense. Like the equipment synergies are key to success in the game.
And I would say don't worry if you end up getting wiped out. A lot of the fun in the game is obviously the combat system we built, but also a lot of the fun in the game is unlocking a bunch of the other heroes and leveling up their companionship with each other. You get a lot of, I think, really funny dialogue, really insightful little bits that goes into their backstories. And for me, that's actually one of the most fun parts of the game, is kind of unlocking all these little dialogues between the heroes. And it takes a lot of playing to kind of see all these different combinations. And of course, you want to discover as many of the unlockable babies or the progeny as you can between the heroes. So
unlockable babies, that's kind of, it's not the term we went with.
Yeah. Unlockable babies?
That's funny.
You know what I meant, progeny.
Progenies. Yeah. That's a good one.
We're all just a bunch of unlockable babies.
That's the truth. So we got one question I'll take before you guys leave, and maybe if you want to add anything to this, but I think this is pretty clear. A Cuddly Kitten asked, are you planning a couch co-op or online where you have two separate progressions that are going up against each other or against stronger / more enemies? And I think the answer to that is no. Is anyone going to surprise me?
We don't have anything of that sort that can easily be made, but I don't know. Like, what if we sell?
Ooh, we could give it a try. I mean, it might work. Why not? I don't know.
I'm not opposed to it. It's
Yeah.
all about resources and money and time.
Listen, yeah, game development, you never know exactly what's going to work. So that's the least committal answer.
We'll throw Liam under the bus and say if Raw Fury gives us funding to build it.
We're going to go to commercials
yeah.
right now. That is all we have time for with these three gentlemen. Jokes aside, thank you so much for joining the stream. And we're going to be right back with Jacqueline, Brian, and Matt. So don't go anywhere.
Thanks,
Thank you guys for watching.
Hello, folks. Welcome back to the live stream. This is Star Renegades launch day. Pretty damn exciting. And with us, we now have three other faces, three other human beings. Actually, two human beings, one half cyborg. We covered that earlier on the stream. The legendary Brian. Why don't you want to introduce yourselves for the folks at home?
Sure. I guess I go first.
Yeah.
I'm Brian. I'm the lead artist at Massive Damage. For the majority of this project, I was the only artist. Matt joined in a little past halfway and helped with all the technical aspects of the art. But yeah, I do all of the pixel art for the most part. There's a couple explosions I know Matt did and a couple other things that I know he did. But 90% of the pixel art, all the pixel animations, the backgrounds, the setting up of the backgrounds in our 3D space, and yeah, all the key art and stuff as well. And that was me.
Fantastic.
And I'll pass it to Matt.
Matt?
So you're passing to me? I did set up a couple of those backgrounds in 3D, but you did the majority of them. Yeah, I'm the technical artist. I've been working on the game since June of last year or so. When they brought me on, the characters basically just kind of hop back and forth to attack each other without any reinforcing effects. So I went in and added all of those particle explosions and bursts of light and camera shakes and made the camera moves for the specific attacks, and just took what would otherwise just be like the sprites all standing in one place doing their thing and make them actually move back and forth to attack each other and initiate all the reactions in combat.
Awesome.
That's me.
And finally, we have Jacqueline.
Hey, I'm Jacqueline. I'm the community developer as well as the UI designer. I worked alongside with Colin and Linda, who aren't here right now, but they did a lot of the UI implementation, and I worked on the design and the art aspect. And if you see any memes posted from the account for social media, that's also me as well.
Fantastic. So thank you so much for the three of you for joining. I'm hoping we can cover a lot of topics with you three, but we're limited on time, of course, and we are in the middle of a run. We have a fantastic party. We're going to hop right into the gameplay again. Previously on Star Renegades Adventures on the hardest difficulty, we slaughtered one of the adversaries. I forget what they were called. They were so easy to kill. So easy. But now we're going to continue. So where are we at? Okay, we can level up. We can do a couple of things. I want to start with the UI, Jacqueline, because it's one of the real core things that the players are going to be looking at for information about what kind of decisions they can make. And I know it went through a lot of iterations. So how did we end up with this UI, and what were some of the challenges that we had with it?
Oh, well, let's see. If I can remember, like the very first days, like the UI was really rough and placeholdery. It's been on like a really long journey with a lot of feedback from everyone on the team and how we should do certain things. But I think we really want to go for like a sort of minimalistic, sort of clean neon lights, like subtle neon lights kind of look. And we kind of wanted a transient glass kind of feeling. So this is how we came to this visually.
Right on. Oh wow, we've just been jetpacked. Shoot. I have a bad feeling about this fight. I think this is going to be a tough one. Well, I guess we'll pass on to Brian for a second. So what we're looking at right now is the actual combat scene. We've seen this a couple of times for those of you watching the stream, but we've been talking a little bit about the amount of frames of animation for every character. Do you want to talk a little bit about the animation work and kind of how that process looked?
Yeah, some of it, unfortunately, I tortured myself with, and other things were imposed on me. So, like, one of the things I pushed for right away was I wanted characters and enemies to have hit down and hit back, which is unusual. Usually characters only have one hit frame or hit animation, but I wanted to be able to combo them so that when you hit them, you get the feeling of like back and down, so that you can have kind of more interesting variety in how enemies are hit. And the other thing is kind of like our animation requirements for characters expanded out to nonsense land, because we have idle animations, we have activation, execution, exhaustion, defend, hit back, hit down, death, and then a various number of attacks. So there's a lot of animation that goes into characters. But when we played a lot of games, and it was one area we felt like we could offer something fresh that you don't typically see in games. So yeah, I just spent a lot of time animating. I mean, I animate mostly just frame by frame in Photoshop. And then I map my sprites, and then he pulls through my PSD and curses my name.
Is that true, Matt?
50,000 layers.
Is that 50,000 is kind of the number? Or?
Oh, look. More layers than any human should be sorting through.
And what happens when you get the sprites in a Photoshop file? What do you do with them from there on?
Well, first I get Brian to tell me like which segments of the timeline are which animations. So I make sure I export those correctly, but then I just get them into the game and define the unit and hook up each one of those animations. And but from there, getting into combat has involved a lot of like taking existing frames that were maybe originally intended for a different attack, but then like a couple weeks later, Gary's like, no, we're not going to do that attack now. Let's make it like this. So I've got to remix those frames to make it still work. I mean, sometimes he'll pass it back to Brian to be like, okay, this new attack needs new frames. It can't happen with the original frames. But yeah, it's just a matter of getting those into the timeline and defining that timeline of them like actually physically moving to the other side of the screen to land the hits, and which frames are playing as they go, and which effects are getting triggered, and to create all those particle effects.
A lot of work.
That's that. Yep, hundreds of attacks.
Do we have like any number of how many characters we have, how many total animations, any crazy facts you can throw out?
Oh, how many enemies do we have? Actually, you could just look up the folder in Steam. Why don't you just tell us how many folders there are for characters and enemies?
Oh, good question.
Matt, you can pull that up for me?
We're gonna find these crazy numbers.
I can get there. Give me 10 seconds.
You got it.
Okay.
I know that there are 48 unlockable heroes, but enemies, it's a lot.
Okay. No, I got the hard answer. It is, let's see, looks to be about 62 character things, either characters or enemies, with up to 500 frames of animation, and portraits, and animated talking portraits, and various other things.
So there's a lot of visuals here. A lot of visuals.
Yeah.
They also have palette swaps. So like some of the progeny you unlock are palette swaps themselves. but then you can apply perks to them that are an extra layer of palette swapping that like changes their outfit or their energy color. And so there are hundreds of permutations of those, because like the original and all of the progeny also need to have all of the perk palettes applied and mixed and matched with them. So you can make your units look a lot of different ways. Working through all those palette swaps, which was another thing that I handled. Actually pulled my wife in on it to help me with them because there was just so many of them to get through.
Fantastic. That's good. A little bit of teamwork. So Blassie in the chat is saying Laser Storm looks so awesome. Don't stun it away. So okay, we're going to actually let this enemy attack us, even though that seems to be the bad idea, but we're going to do it.
There's a lot of attacks in the game that I know me and Matt spend a lot of time on that players may never see, which is kind of funny because it's like even the spider tank. I know I spent a bunch of time and Matt spent a bunch of time. He has this mode where he goes into a ball and he rolls through the enemies. It's like everyone completely cancels it beforehand. So it's like you do all this work on this animation and no one sees.
So we're actually going to let this enemy do the death beam attack now, which is like a strong AoE. We'll see what happens. I'm going to die now, aren't I?
I mean, you can always inspect and see if you're going to die before he does it.
Well, we're good. That's badass. So what was some of the I guess this is a question for everybody. Like, what was some of the inspiration for the parts that you made for the game? What were you looking at? Other games, other mediums?
I know Jacqueline and I could talk about some stuff because for the longest time, I heard you talking about this with the other coworkers, but like Jacqueline and I were the biggest advocates for the campfire and the card mechanic to the extent where we both did. I worked at a cool thing a bunch of times where like a Friday once in a while you could do whatever you want, and you could either learn something or you can do something. And every time Jacqueline and I were just like, we made the campfire scene before they even had a use for it, and Jacqueline and I mocked up the cards before they had any use for it. And we were like, and Jacqueline's like, we need food. So I'm like, okay, I'll draw you like 4 foods for now, and then you can do what you want with it. So it's kind of
Pasty ramen.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
We got the Krugenberry smoothie right here.
Nice.
Yeah.
So that was basically just a passion project, essentially.
Yeah. Well, the extra features. Well, the parts of this that. Well, I know for me, I'm a huge fan of Grandia and Fire Emblem and games like that. And I always thought the campfire moments, and not campfire, but the dinner moments in Grandia gave a completely different feel to characters, where you could, and it made those games feel really different than other JRPGs. With other JRPGs, oftentimes they just felt like too grandiose. It's like everything was grandiose, I guess. Everything is always so intense, and you never see another side of the characters. And then you'd play Grandia, and someone would steal the big piece of chicken at dinner, and then there'd be all this banter about it, and it made the characters feel more like, I guess, just relatable, because there you saw more of them, more different aspects of them. And we wanted to have something like that in the game.
Awesome. Actually, we're at the campfire scene right now. Taking it easy. Having some smoothies. It's a fun thing to bring to a camp, right? But this is a different dimension, you know. We don't judge.
hollow marshmallows. I saw a bunch of people commenting on it. It was like, they completely gave me free reign. They're like, we need Justin to do something at the campfire. And I'm like, and this was like, adding Justin to the campfire was one of the last things we did. So we were
with the marshmallow stick in the, or is it what is it? Is it a hollow marshmallow?
Yeah, and then me and Matt were like trying to figure out how to make it glow with and keeping in line with everything else, because at first it wasn't glowing. I'm like, it needs to glow, Matt. How are we gonna do this?
So here, this is actually something we didn't see before, and it's funny now because we've named 2 of the characters after chat members. GD Insomniac 23 and Violator are now companions, which means that we have 2 characters in the game that have given each other enough food and gifts, I suppose, or stories. There's a bunch of variation. And now we've gained some traits, so they're getting extra shields and extra crit damage, which is really useful if you use it for the right heroes and you start building some nice synergies. There's a question in the chat here from a cuddly kitten, once again. I love generational systems in games. Did you take any inspiration from Massive Chalice for this or any other games? Anyone know the answer to that? No one knows.
I think we're like the relationships. Oh, sorry. The relationships were more inspired by, I think Fire Emblem was one of them. I haven't played Massive Chalice, but I think Peter mentioned something about that.
All right.
Peter
Yeah.
and Gary definitely mentioned Massive Chalice, and I think Jacqueline and I were more looking at it from other games. So I know Fire Emblem Awakening specifically, with having the time portal where you would get characters from other generations, having some aspect like that in the game was something that we wanted to look at. And I liked, like in Dark Souls or something like that, how you have a setting that explains everything, why you keep coming back from the dead, all of that aspects. And I know we just took inspiration from games that kind of felt complete on those fronts.
All right. So, question from Cheese Grater: do you know if there's any consideration for mod support? And I know this was something we talked about actually earlier today because it was a question that's come up. It's going to be a lot of work to do something like that, and I think unfortunately it's not something we would be able to do in the near future. But we're definitely not ruling anything out completely at this point. I think, well, the only thing we're probably never doing is like a battle royale or loot boxes. Those kinds of things you're not going to see in this game.
Who knows?
Well, okay, battle royale may be confirmed by Jacqueline. There we go. We'll see. But probably not. Probably not. At least not in anytime soon. We shall see.
I think with any game that's well liked enough, it just feels like a matter of time before someone decompiles it and strips it apart and makes their own modding tools.
Yeah. I mean,
so
we're
we'll
now
see if
challenged.
anyone's that ingenuitive out there. But
Exactly. Cool. So I want to ask you three a question that I asked the previous squad, which is basically this: how did you get into the games industry, and do you have any advice for anybody who may be watching at home that's thinking about joining the industry at any point or wants to make games of their own?
Ooh, a serious question. For community management, I guess like one advice I always give is take an empathetic approach to problem solving, especially when you're working in a small intimate team or even among the community. Everyone will always have different opinions, but it always comes from like a place of sincerity and passion. So just respect other people's spaces and try to put yourselves in their shoes per se, and hopefully focus on solving the problem. Yeah, that's my advice.
That's really good advice. And how did you get into the industry?
Oh, it's been so long ago. It's all honestly, it's all a blur for me. But I think I started off working as a junior game design intern at a small to mid-sized studio, and they're making games for kids, like apps for kids. And then I think I'm just gonna tell my story of how I met Ken, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think there was this group or like a meetup in Toronto called Torontaru. It's like a sort of meetup where all the game devs in the city just come out for drinks every last Wednesday or first Wednesday, I don't remember. But I met Ken there, and then we just started talking about games and stuff, and here I am.
Awesome.
So yeah, just do a lot of networking and just, I guess, make opportunities for yourself naturally. I don't know. I'm not the best at advice, but my take an empathetic approach to problem solving advice, I think, stands.
So meeting Ken is apparently a really good way to get into the industry so far. That's been a recurring theme.
Yeah, it was Peter's, and now it's mine.
Awesome. What about you, Matt? How'd you get into the industry, and do you have any advice for anyone who might want to?
Well, I started out like my entire major was in film and TV animation. But then after I graduated, I came to Canada to marry my wife. And the first job I happened to land was in game animation instead. And so, once you're in one side of the industry or the other, film or games, you kind of tend to stay in that side. So that's the lane that I've kept swimming in since then. Just moving from production to production. I think that as far as advice goes, the biggest thing I've seen is as the most impactful is networking. Honestly, that and don't discount just like self-teaching things, because like so many people, myself included, are deeply in debt from going to university. And when you're an artist, all that truly matters is how good's your art. So most places aren't going to glass ceiling you over a degree if you're a very good artist. So yeah, you can definitely outstrip people that who went through those programs just by being better. That and knowing the right people, because so often when jobs open up, it becomes like an internal recommendation, like does anybody on the team know anyone who would be good for this, before it becomes external. So if you already know someone who's on a team like that, then your chances of getting in before it becomes a free-for-all of thousands of people sending in their resumes, that goes way up.
That's good advice. Brian, same questions.
Yeah. How do you get into the industry and all that?
Yeah.
When I finished art school, Sheridan, I actually went to teachers college to get my Bachelor of Education, and I came back and we migrated to New Zealand. My wife is from New Zealand, and I got a job at Best Buy, and we found out we had our first kid on the way, and I realized I either had to go on this full tilt or not at all. I looked for teaching jobs, I looked for art jobs, and I was randomly contacted by a different small game studio in Toronto. And then I worked there for 2 years, and it wasn't the best experience. I thought that I always worked a lot and really hard, but they really wanted more hours than I was willing to give with a small family. And I always created enough work. It wasn't like there wasn't enough content or whatnot. It was just that. So I actually left the game industry for 2.5 years.
Okay.
Until a friend of mine who was best friends with the artist of Halcyon 6 was like, hey, he's leaving and half of the game needs to be done. Do you want to apply for it? And I was like, okay. So I went in and I applied, and I almost passed it to my friend. I was almost like, I don't want to work in the game industry. And instead, I'm like, you know what, I can do the art test. So I did the art test, and then I got the job. And I've worked at Massive Damage for 4 years now, almost 4 years in November. But my thing was always like, I came onto a project and they always had another artist that was really good, but did not enough artwork. And I would come on and I would do twice as much work in the same time they did. And then, which I don't know how, but then I would, because of that, I would, get more and more work. So starting and just working really diligently made me get more and more and more work. And then this was the hardest one for me to start Renegades, because every other project I'd worked on, another artist had started it. And then I had to match their style and I had to carry it to the end. And this is the first game that's like all me.
Yeah.
So it's a bit nerve-wracking, because it's like you put so much of yourself in, people love it, but people hate it, right? Because before you'd be like, oh, some other artist set the style in motion, but this one is all me. So glad the response has been really positive so far. What I'd recommend to people is don't work on, if you have a game idea or you have something like that, don't work on something you think would be profitable. Work on something you love. Because I don't know, I think it's pretty obvious when people are working on projects that they just think will make money or whatnot, but when it's a game that you really care about, it makes a big difference. One of the big things with the Massive Damage team, the biggest problem I'd say in the studio is that we all love the game too much. We wanted it to be so good. So if we fight, it's just that our vision's slightly different about what the game should be. And Gary has a great vision for it, and Peter and Jacqueline and Matt and all of us have great visions for the game, but sometimes they're slightly different, but we care so much about it that, we have to, and that's our biggest fights. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. And people can tell when you love a game that you're working on.
Very good answer.
Another important part of succeeding, self-promotion. What's everybody's Twitter handle, huh?
And if anyone wants to drop any social channels, shout outs to any sponsors, feel free.
You can find me at Canadianimator. That's Canadian plus animator. Canadianimator.
It's genius.
Ryan?
It's funny because I had no social media presence. I'd done a few things that went viral before, but not on purpose. I just did them and they went out there. But Jacqueline was always like prodding me. She's like, Brian, you need better social. Brian, you need better social. And I was like, I don't want to bother with this. You know, I don't mind doing the artwork, but I don't want to manage this. That's funny because like I joined Twitter in 2012, but I think all of my posts are in the last 7 months.
Yeah.
And what's your Twitter handle, Brian?
It's just at Brian Heemskirk, I guess.
There
So
you
if
go.
anyone's interested, feel free to add me, message me on there.
I think there's an underscore, isn't there? No, there's not. No underscore.
You have to be able to spell my name correctly. That's the big thing. I have
That's the
people
test.
add
isn't it?
I's in all of my names, and I have no I's in any of my names.
And Jacqueline, any shout outs?
Shoutouts. Shoutouts to all the people who was with us on this game development journey to the very end. We wouldn't have been able to do it without you guys.
And social channels?
Oh, social channels. Wait, what's my Twitter? Sorry.
JC.
Oh yeah, it's JCQUELINE Joy. Not very user friendly. Or
People can watch the replay and
there.
figure it out. So I'm currently dying here in this run. It didn't go at all as well as I was thinking. Funny, I walked into this fight, I thought, this is going too well. And then this happened. I've got 2 men down. Actually, 1 man and 1 woman. Sorry. There's a question here from the chat as well. From Nikolayevska. Curiosity. Why did you choose this color palette for the game? What was the inspiration? Because there's obviously quite a lot of color here.
You're talking about like, I just, for some reason, this all starts from like a conversation with Peter and I, because when we first did the trailer for Star Renegades, we had done a different game that we completely abandoned, and we had a month, me and him, to whip out a trailer to put, which is the very first, if you go to the Massive Damage trailer, the very first Star Renegades anything video that we posted. And we wanted, because everything at the time was post-apocalyptic. It was all dreary and sad and all of that. And then we were like, no, we want like epic, lush landscapes. We want things to be moving. We want to, and I was pushing for constant wind, which was a very big mistake on my part because it meant that like every character with hair or capes, I had to animate like crazy. And anyways, but one of the big things for the color is I just chose pink as a secondary character, and I use it as a color. And obviously I think about color palettes for specific backgrounds and for planets. Most of them have like either an analogous or a complementary color scheme with one primarily saturated color. But if the planet has primary other color, I try to use pink in there as a secondary, just so there's something harmonious throughout the entire game. And that was just something I don't know why, it just kind of stuck through the game. I intentionally avoided green and yellow as much as possible.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Not that they're bad colors, but just for this game.
Okay.
Brian kept telling me, it's like, oh, can you not use as much yellow and green in the UI? I was like, I can't, because for accessibility purposes, they need to be in there. But yeah.
You might see those colors very rarely as an adversary color, but that just makes them all the more special looking.
Exactly.
I forgive you for it, Matt. I forgive you. The Skeletor color is pretty cool for the...
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, we have a few adversary colors. My wife was like, she's like, we got to have some palette swaps that are like references to other media, purely coincidental resemblances. So she's got like a Magneto in there and all sorts of things.
Oh, didn't know that. Interesting. So speaking of heroes as well, do you have a personal favorite, the 3 of you? You can do a top 3 if you want.
Visually.
I think a gunslinger for me. I like all the lasers and lights.
Lasers,
And
lights, and
references
holo
to
rays.
EDM.
Now, I can definitely show my favorite. Oh, I don't know if you can see my camera.
Mr.
Still on
Bentley,
the front.
Commando,
But
space pirate,
I have-
author.
I have sketches and sketches of Bentley in
awesome.
various ways. I don't know. I was trying to capture, like, I loved the odd robot characters in Chrono Trigger and Breath of Fire 4, Urshin and Breath of Fire 4 Robo, and they're just like, I had the idea for him. I didn't get into the story where he wore like all of this cloth because he was programmed to feel cold all the time. so that he was like a temperature testing bot, and that tortured him. And that was just kind of like my original silly idea for the guy, but probably my favorite.
It's awesome. And what about you, Matt? You got a favorite?
Well, I initially said Bentley, but then I remembered Spectra existed. So, no,
Spectre. You know, Spectre's pretty cool. We'll do.
It was one of the funnest ones to animate.
It was fun to animate?
Yeah, Spectre. Well, because the Spectre character can phase in and out, and
yeah.
I like really referenced. She has one where she teleports, backstabs, and uppercuts with like almost like a Shoryuken style flame effect off of it. That I had a lot of fun doing the frames for, and I think Matt had fun playing with it afterwards.
Awesome. So,
Liam, I'm surprised you lasted that long on that last run on extreme difficulty while distracted talking to us.
It didn't do too well. Got to the first adversary, the first like behemoth, I should say, which is the final boss of each planet, and did not survive. So I challenge all of you at home: beat the game on the easy difficulty first, and then do the next one, and then do the next one, which is what we're doing right now, because it's tough, and I'm not very good at the game. Question from chat. Long man, long legs. That's a great name. There's actually an underscore as well, so I should say long man underscore long legs. They ask two questions. I'm going to do the second one first. Do the three of you eat poutine? Is that how you pronounce that?
Poutine?
Yes. Yes.
Yes and yes?
I like poutine. My wife hates it.
Okay.
I'm originally from America, so of course, for the first few years after coming here, I ate too much poutine. I had to make up for a lifetime of not having poutine. But now it's a once in every while thing.
Okay, once in a while, that makes sense. And the other question from longman underscore loglegs was, this doesn't start as a question really, but everyone seems so lovely and polite. Do you pretty people ever battle over different directions to take the game?
In lovely and polite ways.
Yes. Very Canadian of us.
Are there many apologies?
It depends on the individuals you're talking about. I think the most combative people are probably me, Gary, and Peter. In that regard, I'm usually... I think we all had very specific visions for what the game would be, and we all had to deviate towards each other a bit, in probably a good way. But Gary and I would fight with Gary about him making it too hard, or so. There's like, because I would play the game on a weekend typically, and then I'd be like, this boss fight doesn't make sense, or this and I would push at Gary, and Gary was so sweet and respectful with all of that, and honestly devised one of the coolest battle systems. Like, I wasn't sure it was going to come together until like the last 6 months, and I'm like, this is turning into something really cool. I played a lot of Jrpgs, and I think that we have something pretty special thanks to Gary and Peter's and Ken too, and all of their input on the battle system.
Yeah, they did a fantastic job.
Yeah, and then
early on, I was like, oh, well, it's got to be compatible with the Mats of the world, which is people who just want to spam their attacks and go through. But I've come to terms with the fact that it's not a spammable game. You do have to slow down and pay attention, but it's worth doing that 'cause the combat's fun that way.
Yeah, the moments where you have all of your attacks set and you have your last character you're picking, and then you undo all of them and then set up a completely different setup and it works out way better, those feel so good.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that we talked about the combos earlier. I haven't made it far enough to show any of them off, but anyone want to talk about the combo system real quick?
I can talk about it.
Yep.
So the combo system, when you romance your characters, and I think they get to partners, they unlock a new combo skill between them, and you can execute it in combat by using Fury. I was like Fury. Fury, which you can accumulate.
Got a lot more interested.
But I guess like these skills, they're super strong, and they can either put at, I think shield your whole squad, or interrupt an enemy, or do a lot of damage. But I'm still unlocking all of them, so it's just keep romancing everyone and see what you unlock. Sleep with everyone.
I heard in the previous stream that Way to put that, Jacqueline. I heard in the previous stream, Peter and Gary noted that I was pushing for combos pretty hard initially, before we had a concept for it or anything. And Matt was, so me and Matt were probably the two that figured it out, because I was pushing for it and I really wanted something like Chrono Trigger, because one of the things that I thought made Chrono Trigger great, and I was really surprised that no other Square games really capitalized on this afterwards, but you would use characters you didn't even like if they gave cool moves with characters that you did like. So let's say, just for reference, you didn't like Luca that much. I'm not saying I don't, but it did a really sweet move where Luca set Chrono's sword on fire. You still want to see that move, even if you don't like that character that much. And because of that, when I played Chrono Trigger when I was a kid, I would go through every possible combo and unlock all the triple combos just to see that kind of synergy. And I thought that was really cool. But I knew we couldn't do the custom attacks with the quantity of animation that we're doing right now and the quantity of characters that we wanted. So I was like, no, we can do this, but we have to do it like Marvel vs. Capcom. So it functions like Chrono Trigger, but it behaves like Marvel vs. Capcom, where they all just jump on and do their thing together.
Well.
And then Matt had to work out who gets the dominant camera and what effects come on play, and then Matt curses my name in the background.
It all worked out, man.
It did. The combo of the two of you made it happen. Well, I guess it's not just the two of you. There was a lot of people who worked on everything, but it sounded cool when I said it, and then I regretted it. Damn it.
Gary had to figure out how everything behaved and how it was balanced. So you always got to give props to Gary for making a purpose for everything, because without that, and Peter too, because Peter is inhuman in terms of organization. He manages workflow for everybody. I've never been able to work as smoothly as I do because of Peter.
Fantastic.
Because he'll just list out everything that I need, and then I can just hammer things out. And it's such a, I don't know, it's the best team I've ever worked with. I'm looking forward to working with them for a long time.
And our two programmers couldn't be here today for interviews, but I feel like I need to take a minute just to say Colin and Lucky, the programmers behind this, have done a phenomenal job with the programming, because the amount of changes that they've had to contend with of retooling the game to figure out exactly the right gameplay has been huge. and
they've built custom tools for all of us.
Yeah.
Like our systems are really custom. So like Lucky built, they have silly names, but Lucky built Wombat, Badger. What's the next one?
Hold up. What's the Wombat Badger?
No, so Wombat is our world map system where you can build maps and load them in. Badger is our background editor, and like Lucky sustained torture from me because I wanted all of these things. I'm like, no, I need to be able to do this, and this, and you'd have to figure out how to do it. And I was not talking extremely technically in terms of code. I just knew what effects I wanted, what shaders I wanted, and how to do them. And then he had to take them and figure them out for me.
And for me, coming on partway through development, I was prepared to just do all this in raw Unity, and then they're like, oh no, we built all these tools within Unity to enhance the experience. So like CATL stands for Combat Animation Timeline that Lucky engineered.
And that name is award-winning. Holy, that's so good.
It's just like the ordinary Unity animation timeline, but with like specific tracks and abilities for our game, because you need to be able to define like whether this attack is going to be hitting multiple units or one unit or pushing them back, or all kinds of different custom attributes.
Very cool. So it's a lot of custom stuff. And for anyone watching who's not familiar, Unity is the game engine that Star Renegades is running on. And on top of that, Lucky, Colin, they've engineered a whole bunch of super cool tools to help the rest of the team make this thing come to life. It's fantastic. Someone else who definitely deserves a shout out, which the chat seems to agree with, Antigua says, the music is insane. The art is insane. The combat system is super satisfying. This is an instant classic. That's such a lovely quote. Thank you so much for that. And the music absolutely is crazy. It's made by a fellow who goes by Steve London. I think that's his real name. He doesn't just go by it, it's his name. But Steve, fantastic work. If you're out there watching this, I think he's actually on vacation right now. He's done a killer job. And of course, the soundtrack is available. You can pick that up directly on Steam. We're probably going to be putting that on some more locations in the future, so stay tuned. One other thing we should mention. Yeah.
Related to that,
Yep.
our sound effects guy, Ori Falconer, he made lots of sweet sound effects for your ear holes.
Oh, it's fantastic. Just the sound of the mechs, they do this thing where it sounds like they're laughing. I'm not going to do an impersonation, but there's, when you hear it, you'll know it. It's beautiful. There's so many nice little touches. So it's a fantastic team, everybody. But one thing we should say is there is also an art book, which I'd actually like to show off. We're just going to kill this guy here, but Brian, maybe you want to talk about the art book a little bit, which is now available in the deluxe edition.
Totally. I don't know if you have any specific questions. It kind of goes through, I show some early processes for concepts that I have for the game. It has sections that kind of highlight some fun animations from each of the characters. It has the 2D, primarily the 2D pixel art versions of most of the backgrounds. So you can kind of get a scene of what I drew before I throw it into 2DX. 2DX is what we call our 2D 3D hybrid. And also I have a section at the end of maps. So if you want to see, it's not like each planet has 3 times 5 maps. So right now, so there's lots of variations as you play, and then everything on them is procedurally generated. But there's a subset of maps that are available in the art book as well, so you can see. I talk a little bit of the process, because what happened first is we had to figure out a way for someone other than me to build maps, because I needed to draw the rest of the game. So I had to kind of visualize what I wanted maps to look like, and then we had to figure out what tools we needed to build or borrow or use to take it from there, and then other people could help with the maps, which I got to put a shout out for Christian, because he was a co-worker of ours that passed away at the end of last year, which was a bit hard for us, but he was assembling the maps for a good portion of time. And yeah, but the art book, it has a lot of concept art, which oddly, our game was pixel art first, concept art second. Right. So when you see all of the concept pieces of Win, that's stuff I came up with after we had approved the tiny in-game battle sprite for them. We started battle sprite first, and we expanded out from there.
All right. Should we take a look at the art book real quick? You okay if I show a couple pages?
No, go for it.
I don't want to show it all. But we're going to shut down the run here now, because I'm just going to die again anyway if we keep going. I'm not good enough. Got to practice. But while I pull up the art book, since we're running short on time, is there anything that you would want to say to a new player who's picking up Star Renegades today? Any pro tips from the folks who've been playing for a long time? Any fun facts or stories you want to tell? Just anything you want to say to the players.
Always be inspecting.
Always be inspecting.
Yes.
Love it.
Yeah, constantly.
I never inspect, and I've beaten the game 3 or 4 times.
Okay, then what do I know?
It's probably good advice. I just never do it.
But since some people haven't noticed, you can. An important thing to point out is you can cancel your powers by going into inspect mode if you've already scheduled a power and selecting your units and hitting cancel on that.
All right.
Because some people have thought like, oh, I selected it, that's it, I can't cancel it. But yeah, just go in there, you can cancel.
I also always play with controller.
That also makes it easier to cancel.
Mouse controls are fine too, but I know that's me personally.
Another tip is to attack them before they attack you on the combat timeline, so you can get your crits in. That's really crucial to staggering the enemy. And defend when you need to. It can really save your life.
Oh, the biggest tip I have for people starting the game, if they haven't had a chance to play it yet, is AoE attacks and attacks that have multiple hits. So if they have 5 hits, they're the only things in the game that don't show you the estimate on your timeline properly. They show inaccurate because it's impossible, because it's randomly distributed who they hit. So it acts as if it's going to hit the same unit 5 times over and over again, instead of it's going to hit 5 different characters. So it's the one place in the game where the damage numbers aren't right. It scares some people when they get so used to trusting the damage previews, but it doesn't reflect that. So don't be as scared. Just inspect them and see whether it's an AoE with multiple hits, and then you'll know whether that's really what you're going to face.
Good advice. Absolutely. So here is the art and illustrations of Star Renegades. And we'll just take a quick look at a couple pages, but as you were mentioning, Brian, there's quite a lot of stuff in here. And I think some of the most fun...
101 pages.
It's 101 pages. It's crazy.
101 pages.
So there's all sorts of kind of concepts and backgrounds and a little message from you, which I'll let people read when they pick up the art book, hopefully. There's even some like voxel art. Is that fair to say, or some 3D?
Oh, I had fun with magic of voxel. One of my close friends works at Coco Cucumber, who did Riverbond in the new game. So I worked with her when she was like an aspiring artist, and she inspired me because at that time she was working in voxels, so I just messed around with it one day.
Fantastic. So there's all sorts of stuff here for folks to explore, and they can kind of go through the journey of how this art came to be. Super cool.
Yeah, I guess when I was a kid, I used to take I had strategy guides for all of the Nintendo games, like in Zelda and Final Fantasy VI and Breath of Fire, and I used to take them to school and draw from them. And I guess it's really cool to be able to do that, and hopefully some kid out there picks it up and does the same thing, and because that's really what I love doing, learning from how did they do that, and taking from that. So hopefully someone out there finds the same kind of joy in it.
Awesome. So I've got one final question for the three of you. What is the thing you are most proud of with Star Renegades? And this is always a tough one, I know, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Everything.
That's perfect.
That's the easy answer.
I guess just the fact that the team managed to come together and reach an accord on what the game should be like, and that in the end, what the game is like appears to be something that people are enjoying, and that's something to be proud of.
Yeah, I guess it's the same for me. I'm super proud of my team. They're all amazing. Everyone did such a great job. I'm proud to work with all of them, and I'm proud of the product. And before a game launches, you're just so anxious because I don't know when. I had an interesting talk with, I got stuck on a plane next to one of the lead artists from Rockstar. And I was saying to him that one of the hardest things about games is they can look like anything. So how do you find the vision that's perfect for your game, right? And, when you put it out there, it's like, and he was saying that the difference between a big team and a small team, with a big team, you can kind of duck or hide behind the project itself. But with a small team, if someone doesn't like the battle effects, that's Matt. If they don't like the pixel art, that's me, right? It's like a personal thing for the game. And if they dislike the UI or stuff, it's just like then that it's a Jacqueline, right? And it's a small team is like you have such ownership of it, and you can take so much pride in it, but it's so scary and that's the real big difference between big fish in small pond and small fish in a big pond with game development. And I'm proud of the entire thing and nervous about the response like crazy, but the response has been really positive so far. So really thankful to all the players as well.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And I would say that if someone wants to work at a large studio, then they should hyper specialize in one thing, because a large studio is big enough to just hire the one person that is excellent at this one thing. But if you want to work on a small team like this, being more generalized is a big asset, because we all end up wearing lots of hats, just handling lots of different small things that would be an entire person's job at a AAA studio.
Right on. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining the launch stream. Congratulations on release. It took a good long while, but here we are. I hope you can take some time off now, or I know everyone's just going to be sitting refreshing the pages to see what's going on the forums and see what people are saying. But hopefully by the weekend you'll get some time off, and we'll be able to start talking about what's next for the game, because we are just getting started. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Rough Fury. Rough Fury's done
for watching, everybody.
All right, so next time on the stream, we will be announcing the brand new feature, which is the